"Murderer!" they screamed. "Witch!" The whole town surrounded her, tearing at her dress, ready to kill her right there in the market square. Eliza had done nothing wrong. She had nursed her dying husband for 6 weeks. She had buried him with her own hands. And now the entire town wanted her dead, because of lies spread by one powerful woman. Then a gunshot cracked through the air. A stranger stepped forward. The richest man in 3 counties. A man who never got involved in town business. Until now. "Eliza Moore," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Will you marry me?" She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he cared. She only knew that saying yes meant survival, and saying no meant death. But here's what she didn't know. The woman who destroyed her life had stolen everything, her husband's savings, her reputation, her future. And the man who just proposed? He knew the truth, and he was about to help her burn it all down. Can a marriage built on survival become something real? What you'll learn. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's building a life so beautiful that your enemies become irrelevant. The meaning. You are never too broken to rebuild. The people who try to destroy you have no power over the woman you choose to become. If you believe every woman deserves a second chance at life, hit subscribe and join our family. Tell me in the comments, have you ever survived something everyone thought would break you? And if this story gives you hope, share it with someone who needs to know survival is possible. That morning was the same hard road for Eliza. It had been 14 months since her husband Thomas passed, and the ugly whispers followed her everywhere. She walked into the market square trying to be invisible, clutching a basket with just 3 potatoes inside, holding on to what little pride she had left. But Red Hollow was not about to let her have a quiet day. The moment she set foot in the square, the air went thick and heavy, like right before a bad storm. There were too many folks out for a Thursday, and all their eyes were locked right on her. Someone hissed, "Murderer," as she walked past. Eliza just gripped her basket tighter and kept her head down. She bought 3 potatoes from old Pete, paying the higher price he was too scared not to charge her. Just as she paid, a sharp voice sliced through the noise. "Eliza Moore." It was Marble Kane. Everyone in Red Hollow knew that voice. Eliza turned slowly, her heart pounding. Marble stood there in a fancy silk dress that was out of place in the dusty square, looking as pretty and as dangerous as a rattlesnake. Behind her were her usual followers, including Sarah Pritchard and even Agnes Holbrook, who used to be Eliza's friend. "Good morning, Mrs. Kane," Eliza said, trying to keep her voice steady. Marble just smiled that cold smile of hers. "I do not think it is a good morning when a poison maker is walking around." Poison maker. That was the new accusation, piled on top of all the others. It did not matter that Eliza had nursed her own husband, Thomas, for 6 long weeks before he died. "I make herbal remedies," Eliza stated. "You make poisons," Marble shot back. "And I bet you tried them on Thomas first." "My husband died of a fever," Eliza insisted, her voice trembling. Another woman, Sarah, chimed in. "We all know he was going to leave you, so you poisoned him." It was a lie. Thomas had loved her. But the truth had left Red Hollow a long time ago. Eliza knew it was useless to argue. They did not want facts. The crowd was closing in now, turning the open square into a cage. Marble's voice rang out for everyone to hear. "Red Hollow has been too patient with you, Eliza Moore." Then a shove from behind sent Eliza stumbling. Her basket fell, the few potatoes scattering in the dust. Another push, and then another. They started passing her around like a broken doll. "Please," she begged. "I have done nothing wrong." "Liar!" a voice screamed, and a clump of dirt hit her back. The mob was getting braver, feeding on its own hate. Then Sarah Pritchard shouted the words that chilled Eliza to the bone. "Strip her! Let us check for witch marks." A cold fear washed over her. Hands clawed at her dress. Someone pulled her hair hard, and she knew she was trapped. There were just too many of them. Have you ever been completely alone, surrounded by people you thought were friends, only to see pure hate in their eyes? They twisted Eliza's arm so hard pain shot clean up to her shoulder. The faces around her, folks she had known her whole life, were ugly with rage. She begged them to stop, but the mob just roared louder. She looked for a friendly face, but found none. Not from the sheriff, who just stood there watching. This was it. This was how she would die. Then a gunshot cracked through the air. Everything stopped. Eliza looked up and saw him. Silas Crow, owner of the biggest ranch in 3 counties, stood with a rifle smoking in his hands. He never got involved in town business. Until now. Silas walked right through the crowd like they were parted waters. He stopped 5 feet from Eliza. After a long look, he turned to the townsfolk. "Evening, folks. Looks like I am interrupting something." Marble Kane finally found her voice. "She killed her husband." "Everyone knows," Silas repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "That is a funny saying. Usually means nobody knows a blessed thing, but you all agreed to believe it." He stared down Marble. "Doc Hartley called it a fever. Is the doc a liar?" When the sheriff finally spoke up, Silas cut him off. "I thought law and order was your job, Dalton. Or do you just let mobs run wild these days?" The sheriff went quiet. Silas turned back to Eliza, who was still kneeling in the dust. He reached down and offered his hand. "Mrs. Moore." Hesitantly, she took it. He pulled her to her feet with ease and draped his heavy coat over her torn dress. It smelled like leather and wood smoke, like safety. He kept a steady hand on her arm and faced the crowd again. "We have a problem," he said. "This town has judged Mrs. Moore without a trial. She has no one to protect her. So, I have a solution." He looked down at her, his cold eyes softening just a bit. "I am going to ask you a question. You can say no, and I will still get you home safe, you understand?" Eliza could only nod. He took a breath, his voice ringing across the square. "Eliza Moore, will you marry me?" A shockwave of silence hit the crowd, broken only by Marble Kane's shriek. "You cannot be serious!" "I am dead serious," Silas said, his eyes still on Eliza. "She is a widow who needs protection. As my wife, she will have my name. Anyone who tries to harm her will answer directly to me. It is a practical solution." Marble sputtered. "She is a murderer!" "Allegedly," Silas shot back, his voice like ice. "Or have we decided to abandon laws in favor of mob rule?" He turned back to Eliza. "So, what is your answer? It is not for love, I will grant you, but it will keep you alive." What other choice did she have? Saying no meant facing this mob again. Saying yes meant she would live. To be tied to a man she did not know, completely at his mercy, was a terrifying thought. But it was better than the alternative. At least this way, she would live. "Yes," Eliza whispered, her voice cracking. Silas leaned in. "A little louder, please. The whole town needs to hear you." Eliza raised her head, staring directly into Marble Kane's furious face. "Yes, I will marry you." The town square erupted. Marble Kane began to shriek, while others gasped in shock. But Silas just gave a small, satisfied smile. "Sheriff, Judge Morrison is in town. We will need him at the church. Let's say 2 o'clock. "Now hold on," Marble sputtered. "You cannot do this. She is a danger to us all." Silas's voice was calm but firm. "That sounds like my risk to take. Unless you have some real evidence, not just mean-spirited gossip." Marble was speechless. "I thought not," Silas said, placing a hand on Eliza's back. He led her through the crowd, which parted as if by magic. He helped her onto his massive black stallion, then swung up behind her, his arms securely around her. "Which way?" he asked. "East Road," she managed. "About a half-mile past the church." They rode away from Red Hollow, leaving the noise and anger behind. Eliza could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "No," he agreed. "I did not." "Then why did you?" He was silent for a moment. "Because I have watched this town try to destroy you for 14 months, and I am tired of watching." Eliza turned to look at him, but his face was hidden by the shadow of his hat. "You have been watching me?" "It is hard not to notice," he said. His eyes met hers, and she felt her breath catch. "Your husband, Thomas, was a good man. He worked for me for 3 years." Eliza shook her head. Thomas had worked so many jobs it was hard to keep track. "He talked about you," Silas went on. "Said you had a way of making things grow that had no business growing here. He loved you a great deal." Tears filled Eliza's eyes. "Then why do they say such awful things?" "Because Marble Kane needed you to be alone," Silas said, his voice hard as stone. "And the easiest way to do that was to ruin your name." "But why? I have never done anything to her." "Are you sure?" Silas asked. "Think back. When did the rumors really start?" Eliza thought hard. The trouble began right after she went to the bank, asking about the money Thomas had saved. They told her it was all gone. "The money," she whispered. "It started after I asked about the money." "Thomas had saved nearly $2,000, Silas said. He was planning to buy you a proper house. But when he passed, that money disappeared, and suddenly the whole town turned on you." The truth was cold and sharp. "Marble stole my money," Eliza said. "Then she made everyone hate me so I could not fight back." "That is my guess," Silas said, his arms tightening around her. "Marrying me keeps you safe. It also sends a message to Marble that she does not run this town." At her small cabin, Silas waited outside while she packed. It did not take long. She owned so little, a few dresses, her mother's hairbrush, and a wedding photograph of her and Thomas. She took one last look at the home they had built, the life they had shared, and then she walked out the door for good. Silas took her bag and helped her back onto the horse. The ride back to town felt heavy and final. When they reached the church, a crowd was already waiting. Marble Kane stood right in front, her face a mask of pure rage. Silas helped Eliza down and offered her his arm. "Shall we?" he asked softly. She nodded, unable to speak, and they walked up the steps together. Judge Morrison looked nervous. "Are you both certain about this?" he asked. "Completely," Silas said. The judge looked at Eliza. "Yes," she said, surprised that she meant it. This was not the future she had dreamed of, but it was a future. The ceremony was brutally short. The judge rushed through the words as if he was afraid Marble might explode. "Do you, Silas Crowe, take this woman to be your wife?" "I do." "And do you, Eliza Moore, take this man to be your husband?" Eliza looked up at Silas. She looked at his strong jaw and his eyes, which were not cold at all when they looked at her. She thought about Thomas. And then she thought about survival. "I do." She remembered the mob and the choice Silas gave her. "I do," she said, her voice steady. The judge declared them husband and wife and shut his book with a snap. Silas gave her a brief, proper kiss that felt more like a promise than passion. The stunned townsfolk just stared as he lifted her onto his horse. Marble Kane shouted a warning. "She'll destroy you, Silas, just like she did Thomas." From atop his horse, Silas's voice cut through the silence. "This is far from over, Marble. I've got all the time in the world now to find out who stole Thomas's money and spread lies about his widow." Marble's face went pale. "Sleep well," Silas added, his voice low. He turned the horse north, and as the town vanished, Eliza felt the first flicker of hope. The Crow Ranch was a kingdom of timber and stone, a place built to last. A ranch hand tipped his hat, showing no judgment. On the porch stood a woman with iron-gray hair and a stern face. "Mrs. Chen, this is my wife, Eliza," Silas said. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Your wife? Since when?" "About 45 minutes ago," Silas replied. The woman eyed Eliza's torn dress and tired eyes. Then her expression softened just a touch. "Well, Mrs. Crow, you look like you need a hot bath and a meal. I will show you to your room." "Our room," Silas corrected gently. A flicker of amusement crossed Mrs. Chen's face. "Of course. This way." The inside of the house was just as solid, with polished floors and a huge stone fireplace. The bedroom they were shown was enormous, a safe haven with a big welcoming bed. After Mrs. Chen left, promising a bath and supper at 6, the silence felt heavy. Eliza stood frozen, unsure what this man she had just married expected. Silas's voice was gentle. "Eliza, look at me." He waited until she did. "You are safe here. This marriage is legal, but you owe me nothing more. You'll have your own choices. I will not force anything on you. Do you understand?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Then why?" "Why me?" Eliza asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why not just hire me? Or give me money to leave town? Why tie yourself to me like this?" Silas stared out the window at the vast Texas plains. "Because anything less would leave you vulnerable, darling. A job means I could fire you. A handout, and the whole town would call you my mistress, making things a sight worse. But as my wife," he said, turning to face her, "you've got rights. You have the protection of my name and the law. Marble Cane can't touch you without going through me first. Anyone who tries to harm you answers directly to me." "But you hardly know me," she stammered. "I know you're innocent. I know you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for, and—" He paused, his voice softening just a bit. "I know what it feels like to be all alone." A knock at the door broke the silence. "Your bath is ready, Mrs. Crow." Two young men brought in a copper tub, followed by Mrs. Chen and a girl hauling buckets of steaming water. They filled it with a practiced speed, adding salts that smelled of lavender before quietly leaving. "I'll leave you to it," Silas said, heading for the door. "Mrs. Chen will bring up some clothes." Eliza whispered a thank you, and then she was alone. She slipped out of her torn dress and faced the mirror. The woman looking back was bruised and haunted, a survivor of a war nobody else saw. Sinking into the hot water was like a prayer being answered. For the first time in over a year, she let her body relax. Afterward, she found a simple gray dress on the bed. It was too big, but it was clean and whole, which felt like a victory in itself. A soft knock announced Mrs. Chen, who carried a tray with tea and small cakes. "I thought you might be hungry. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in months." It was true. Eliza accepted the cup, the first sip of real tea feeling like heaven. "Mrs. Chen," she started, "why has Mr. Crow never married before?" The older woman sat down, ready for a story. "Oh, plenty have tried, especially that Marble Cane, but Mr. Crow isn't interested in a woman who just wants his money or his land. He's a complicated man," she said, pouring her own tea. "Came here 20 years ago running from something fierce. Built this place from nothing. He's fair, but he keeps himself apart. Lonely, but by his own choice, until today. I've never seen him truly angry until he came back from town saying he was getting married to protect you. That was a cold, quiet rage, all of it aimed at the injustice done to you." Shouting from the yard drew both women to the window. Down below, Silas stood with his ranch hands, all of them watching a group of riders approach. Eliza's heart sank. Even from a distance, she recognized the purple dress and perfect posture of Marble Cane. "Well now," Mrs. Chen said dryly, "this should be interesting." Marble's group stopped at the gate. Silas walked forward to meet them, his stance relaxed, but he looked like a wolf about to deal with a pack of yapping coyotes. "I need to go down there," Eliza said, heading for the door. Mrs. Chen caught her arm. "Better to let your husband handle this. That's why he married you, isn't it? Going down there just gives her the confrontation she's looking for. You stay here, watch, learn how a man like Silas Crow deals with folks like her." Eliza stayed. She watched Marbell shout and point at the house. Silas stood like a stone wall, listening. Then he said one short, quiet thing, and Marble's face turned a furious shade of red. She jerked her horse around so hard it nearly bucked, then kicked up dust heading out of the gate. Her friend hurried to catch up. Silas watched them go, then looked right up at Eliza in the window. Even from that far off, she saw the question in his eyes. She gave a small wave, hoping he understood she was all right and grateful. He gave a single nod and headed for the barn. Mrs. Chen appeared, looking satisfied. See? That man knows his business. Supper was quiet. At 6 o'clock sharp, Silas sat down, his hair still damp and a fresh shirt making his eyes look deep blue. He asked about the bath as he held her chair. It was perfect, thank you. She watched him take his seat. Marble came by, he said, taking a plate from Mrs. Chen. She had some opinions on our marriage. I saw, Eliza said. What did you tell her? I told her my marriage wasn't her concern. Then I suggested if she was worried about danger, she ought to look at her own behavior. Spreading lies to cover a crime is a serious thing. Eliza's appetite vanished. This will cause you trouble. What trouble? Silas looked her square in the eye. Will they stop buying my cattle? I sell clear across 3 territories. Stop working for me? I pay twice what any man in this valley makes. Shun me at the town social? A little smile touched his lips. I haven't been to one of those in 8 years. What can Red Hollow take from me, Eliza? She thought about it. Marble only had power because folks were scared of her. But this man feared nothing and had more money than the whole town. Nothing, Eliza said softly. They can't take a thing from you. Exactly, which is why marrying you cost me nothing, but gave you everything. He paused. Well, almost. You are not free. You are tied to me now. It is a different kind of cage. A cage I can walk out of, Eliza reminded him. You said I could leave. Can you? His voice was gentle but firm. Where would you go? Back to Red Hollow? They would destroy you. Another town? A woman alone is a target. You have no money, no protection. Oh, each word was a stone building a wall around a truth she could not escape. She had traded one trap for a safer one. I'm sorry, Silas said, and he sounded it. I am not trying to hurt you, but safety and freedom are not the same thing. Tell me about Thomas, Silas said after a moment. The real man, not the stories. Eliza looked up, surprised. Why? Because you loved him, and because I liked him. A good man deserves to be remembered for who he was. So she told him. She told him how they met at a church dance where he stepped on her foot and stumbled over his apology so bad it made her laugh. She told him about his awful poetry and the wildflowers he brought her. She described their tiny wedding and how he promised her a grand house one day. But she told him their little cabin was perfect. She spoke of the small things, how he sang off-key or brought her smooth river stones he knew she liked. She told him how he learned to braid her hair when she was sick, his big, rough hands turning gentle. And she told him how he died, using his last good moments to make her promise she would keep on living. When she finished, tears were on her cheeks, but for the first time, there was no shame with the grief. He sounds like he was worth loving, Silas said quietly. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to her. To Thomas Moore, a good man who got a bad deal. To Thomas, she whispered. Now, Silas said, sitting back down, we need to talk about what comes next. Tomorrow, make a list of everything you need. Clothes, supplies for your herbs, anything. Mrs. Chen will take you into town. I can't go back there, Eliza said, panic rising in her. You will not go to Red Hollow. Mrs. Chen will take you to 3 Forks. It is 30 miles west, big enough that news travels slow. You will be safe. He paused, his eyes hardening. But you will have to face Red Hollow again someday. We cannot hide forever. Why not? She asked. You said you do not need them. Because I meant what I told Marbell. I am fixing to find out what really happened to Thomas and his money. I will find out who spread those lies about you. That night, Eliza lay in a huge, comfortable bed while Silas slept in a chair by the window. He would not hear otherwise. saying he wanted to be sure she felt safe. For the first time in 14 months, as the house settled around her, she fell asleep without being afraid of the morning. The next few days were peaceful. In Three Forks, she and Mrs. Chen bought what she needed, and not one person looked at her like she was a monster. It was a strange, good feeling. Model. Eliza had almost gotten used to feeling safe, but on the fourth night she woke to the sound of men shouting and the sharp smell of smoke. Silas was gone, his chair by the fire empty. She ran to the window and her heart stopped. The barn was a tower of flames, painting the night sky a terrible orange. Men scrambled with buckets, but it was no use. The barn was lost. Rushing outside, the heat hit her like a physical blow. A ranch hand grabbed her arm. "You got to stay back, ma'am." "Where is Silas?" she cried. "The boss went in for the horses." Just then, a huge section of the roof caved in with a deafening roar. From inside that fiery nightmare, a scream tore through the air. Without a second thought, Eliza ran straight for the barn. She plunged through the doorway into a blistering hell. The smoke was so thick it stole the air from her lungs. Dropping to her hands and knees, she crawled through the chaos. "Silas!" she screamed, her voice raw. A horse, its eyes wide with terror, galloped past her. Then she heard him. "Eliza, get out of here!" He was in a back stall, wrestling with a panicked horse tangled in its rope. "Help me," he choked out. "Just hold his head steady." She grabbed the horse's halter, pressing her face to its own. "Easy now, boy," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We're fixin' to get you out." The horse quieted just enough for Silas to free it. They stumbled out into the cool night air together as the rest of the barn collapsed behind them in a shower of sparks. "You could have been killed," Silas said, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking my husband was inside a burning building," she shot back. "What was I supposed to do, wait outside?" "Yes," he said, grabbing her shoulders. "The whole point of this is to keep you safe." "Well, maybe I want to keep you safe too," she said, looking right into his tired, soot-covered face. Before he could answer, a ranch hand ran up. "Boss, we caught him." Behind the smoldering ruins, two men held a young fella who reeked of kerosene. Silas's face hardened. "Lock him in the root cellar." The boy sputtered. "You can't do that. I got rights." "So did my barn," Silas said quietly. Then he leaned in close. "Now you're going to tell me who paid you to do this." Eliza watched the sun rise over the smoking ruins of her barn. Her throat was raw, and a blanket did little to warm the chill she felt. Silas sat beside her, his jaw set hard. "It was marble," Eliza stated. "I reckon so, but we need proof," Silas replied. "That boy in the root cellar knows something." She felt a fire ignite inside her, pushing out the fear she had lived with for 14 months. She was done being a victim. "I want to be there when you question him," she said, her voice firm. Silas studied her for a long moment. "This could get dangerous, Eliza." "It is already dangerous," she shot back. "I'm tired of hiding. I want to fight." A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "All right then, Mrs. Crow. Let's fight." 3 hours later, Sheriff Dalton finally arrived, looking bothered by the whole affair. "Heard you caught an arsonist," he grumbled, eyeing the wreckage. "In the root cellar," Silas said, his voice level. "My men caught him with kerosene and matches. They're willing to testify." The sheriff waved a dismissive hand. "Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The boy might have just made a mistake." "Setting a fire is not a mistake, Sheriff. It is a crime," Silas countered. "I'll go talk to him," Dalton said, starting toward the cellar. Silas moved to block his path. "I will be joining you." "That is not proper procedure, Mr. Crow." "Neither is ignoring attempted murder." Silas's voice dropped, quiet and sharp. "That fire nearly spread to the bunkhouse where my men were sleeping. So yes, I will be there. And so will my wife." Dalton's eyes flickered to Eliza. He clearly did not want her involved, but he did not argue. The three of them walked to the stone cellar. Silas unlocked the heavy door, revealing a young man huddled inside. He looked like a scared kid trying to act tough. "About time," the boy sneered. "Locking me up like this is illegal." "So is arson," Silas replied calmly. "Son," Sheriff Dalton began, "what were you doing on this property with kerosene?" "Just walking by," the boy lied. "Found the can on the road." "Walking by at 2 in the morning, 20 miles from town?" Silas pressed. The boy's eyes darted around. "Maybe I was looking for work." Eliza had been quiet, observing him. She knew the signs of a liar. "You are terrible at this," she said softly. The boy flinched. "You do not know me." "I know you are scared," she continued. "I know someone paid you to do this, and you are realizing they will not save you. Is loyalty to them worth hanging for?" "Nobody is hanging," Dalton interrupted. "Actually, Sheriff," Silas said, "arson that endangers human life is a capital offense in Montana. We had 12 men sleeping 50 yards from that barn." The boy turned pale. "I did not mean for anyone to get hurt. She said the barn would be empty. She said—" He stopped, realizing his mistake. Silas seized on the slip. "Who is she?" The boy's mouth snapped shut. It was too late. "Son," the sheriff said, his tone softening, "if someone put you up to this, a judge might go easier on you." The boy looked trapped. "I want a deal," he whispered. "You guarantee I do not hang." Silas knelt to look him in the eye. "What is your name?" "Danny." "Danny," Silas said. "The person who hired you is just as guilty, maybe more so. They were too cowardly to do it themselves. Tell us who hired you. I will personally speak to the judge. You will still face consequences, but I will make sure everyone knows you cooperated." Tears welled in Danny's eyes. "She said it was just to scare you. She promised $50 and a job." "Who, Danny?" Silas asked. "Who said that?" "Mrs. Kane," he choked out. "Marble Kane." The name hung in the cellar air, cold and final. They finally had their proof. Sheriff Dalton looked like he'd bit into a bad lemon. "Hold on, you're telling me that Maribel Kane, the judge's widow, paid you to burn down Crow's barn?" Danny nodded, swiping at his face with a grimy hand. "She found me in Three Forks. Said she had a simple job for me, setting a fire. Offered me more cash than 6 months of honest work." He choked back a sob. "My mama's sick. I needed the money." Eliza's voice was soft. "You thought you could do one wrong thing for a right reason, and it would all wash out." "Yeah," Danny whispered. "I was wrong." Silas stood up, his knees popping. "Sheriff, I want that statement taken down, signed, and witnessed. Then I want you to ride out and bring Maribel Kane in." Dalton shifted his boots. "Now, Mr. Crow, we can't just go arresting folks on the word of a hired hand." Silas's voice was calm but hard as iron. "That's why my men will give their own statements. That's why we have the evidence. And Sheriff, if you don't do your job, the territorial governor will hear about how the law in Red Hollow only protects the rich." Dalton's face soured, but he gave a short nod. "Fine, but Mrs. Kane ain't gonna come easy." "I don't expect her to," Silas said. "That's why I'm coming with you." Eliza stepped forward. "Me too." It took most of the morning to get Danny's confession down on paper. By noon, they were on their way to Red Hollow, leaving Danny locked in the root cellar. The ride felt 100 miles long. Eliza's stomach was in knots. She hadn't set foot in that town since her wedding day, and the memory of all those staring, judging faces made her skin crawl. But things were different this time. This time she rode between her husband and the law. This time she had the truth on her side. They rode into Red Hollow when the sun was high and hot. Folks turned and stared. The whispers started right away, spreading like a prairie fire. "That's her," someone hissed. "The Crow Witch." Eliza kept her chin up and her eyes forward. "Let them talk." They'd know the truth soon enough. Maribel Kane lived in the biggest house on the best street, a two-story white mansion with a fancy garden. They hitched their horses, and the sheriff led the way to the front door. Silas Crow approached the porch like a man with a heavy heart. When he knocked, a stern maid opened the door, her eyes full of scorn. "The sheriff and Mr. Crow," she said, barely glancing at Eliza. "Mrs. Kane is not seeing anyone." Sheriff Dalton spoke plainly. "This is not a social visit, Martha. It is official business." Silas added, "The kind involving fire and conspiracy. You can tell Mrs. Kane she can talk to us here, or the sheriff can arrest her in front of the whole town. Her choice." The maid vanished. Soon Marble Kane appeared, dressed in fine silk as if for tea. "Sheriff, this is highly unusual. What is this all about?" "May we come inside, ma'am?" Dalton asked. "Better to discuss this in private." Marble led them to a fancy parlor and sat like a queen. "Now, what is this?" Dalton opened his notebook. "Mrs. Kane, where were you last night between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning?" Marble raised her eyebrows. "I was right here sleeping, of course." "And who can prove that?" "My staff, I suppose." Silas pointed out her staff would not know if she left the house late at night. "What are you suggesting, Mr. Crow?" "I am stating that someone set my barn on fire last night. We caught him. He confessed you hired him." All the color left Marble's face. "That is absurd. Who is this person?" "You cannot believe a criminal over me." "Danny Warren," Dalton said. "A 20-year-old who says you offered him $50 to do the job." Marble stood up, furious. "I have never been to a saloon, and I do not know any Danny Warren. This is ridiculous." Eliza spoke quietly, stopping everyone. "He knew what you were wearing." Everyone turned to her. "He described your purple dress with the black trim and the cameo brooch, the same one you wore to church 2 Sundays ago." Marble was speechless, looking for an escape. "That proves nothing. Anyone could have described that dress," Silas continued, "but he also knew the specific instructions you gave him. He knew things, Marble, that only you could have told him. Unless you coached him to say these things," Marble shot back. "Why would I frame you?" Silas asked. "Because I opposed your marriage to that woman," she said, pointing a trembling finger at Eliza. "You are angry because I would not accept your murderous wife." "My wife is not a murderer," Silas said, his voice turning to ice. "But for 14 months you have spread lies and made her life a misery." "Why?" "She killed Thomas Moore," Marble cried. "Thomas Moore died of a fever," Eliza said, her own anger rising. "The doctor confirmed it was natural, but no one would listen." Marble's eyes grew wild. "Everyone knows you practice dark arts and make poisons." "I make medicine." Eliza's voice was clear and strong. "I use herbs to help people. There is nothing evil about knowledge you are afraid of because you cannot control it. Or me." "I was not afraid of you," Marble spat. "You were a poor widow with nothing. You were easy to—" She stopped, realizing her mistake. "Easy to what?" Silas asked softly. "Easy to blame." "I think you'd better come with me, Mrs. Kane," Sheriff Dalton said. "I am not going anywhere. I have done nothing wrong." "I have a signed confession from Danny Warren," the sheriff told her. "I have evidence and witnesses. And right now, you are acting as guilty as they come. You can come along quietly, or I can arrest you right here." Marble's composure shattered. She suddenly lunged for a desk drawer and pulled out a small pistol. "Get out!" she shrieked, aiming the gun. "Get out of my house!" Silas immediately stepped in front of Eliza. "Marble, put the gun down. This will not help you." "You have already destroyed me," Marble cried, her finger shaking on the trigger. "You have taken my reputation." "What have we taken?" Eliza asked, stepping out from behind Silas. "We only asked for the truth. If the truth destroys you, you should ask yourself why." "You do not understand," Marble sobbed, "what it is like to build yourself up from nothing, only to have it threatened by a widow asking about her dead husband's money." It all clicked into place for Eliza. "This is about Thomas's money, the $2,000 that went missing when he died. You took it." Marble's face was her confession. "He owed it to the bank. There were debts and fees. What debts? Silas demanded. Thomas had no debts. There were debts, Marble insisted weakly. It was all legal. Model, then show us the papers, Silas said, his voice flat. If it's all legal, you'll have bank records. Maribel's hand began to tremble. I don't have to show you a thing. Actually, ma'am, you do, Sheriff Dalton said, finally finding his spine. I'm going to need to see those records. You can't just demand. I can with a court order, which I'm fixing to get, Dalton cut in. Now put the gun down, Mrs. Kane. You're only making this worse. For a second, no one breathed. Then Maribel just crumpled into a chair, the pistol clattering on the hardwood floor. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. The judge, he left me with terrible debts. Gambling women. I was about to lose everything. My house, my name. Then Thomas Moore died, and all that money was just sitting there. And his wife was a nobody, Eliza finished for her. So you took it. And when I started asking questions, you turned the whole town against me just to shut me up. Maribel nodded, dark tears cutting paths through her makeup. I just needed time. But then you married Silas, and I knew he'd dig until he found the truth. I panicked. I thought the fire would distract y'all. You nearly got 12 men killed because you're a thief and a coward, Silas said, his voice dripping with contempt. Sheriff Dalton picked up the gun. Maribel Kane, I'm arresting you for theft and conspiracy to commit arson. Attempted murder. You have the right to an attorney. Before you take her, Eliza said, holding up a hand, I need to know one thing. Marble, a broken mess of tears and smeared makeup, looked up. Did you kill my Thomas? Eliza asked plainly. Did you poison him for his money? No, Marble whispered, her voice empty. I swear he died from the fever, just like the doctor said. But when he was gone, she admitted, shame finally breaking through. You saw your chance, Eliza stated, and you took it. Sheriff Dalton pulled Marble to her feet. By the time they walked outside, it seemed the whole town of Red Hollow was waiting. Seeing Marble Kane in cuffs sent a shockwave through the crowd. Silas's voice boomed over the murmurs. For over a year, y'all have condemned an innocent woman because of this one's lies. She stole from Eliza, ruined her good name, and then hired a man to burn my barn down with 12 souls inside. Marble Kane will answer for her crimes. But Silas looked over the crowd. The rest of you ought to think hard about the cruelty you showed a woman whose only sin was surviving her husband. The street fell silent as Marble was loaded into a wagon, headed for the jail in Helena. Riding back to the Crow Ranch, Eliza felt a weight lift that she had carried for 14 long months. The truth was finally out. Thank you, she said to Silas, for believing in me, for helping me fight. He just looked at her, something new in his eyes. You did all the fighting, Eliza. I just opened the door for you. This marriage, which began as a desperate bargain, felt like it could become something real, built not on romance, but on battle-tested trust. In the weeks that followed, the truth about Maribel spread through Red Hollow like a prairie fire. A territorial prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman named Margaret Whitfield, arrived and began to dig into every single dollar that had passed through Maribel's hands. Eliza watched it all from a distance. As she and Silas rode into town for meetings, she felt the town's shame. It was a heavy, suffocating thing. The folks who had once screamed at her now couldn't even meet her gaze. Women who had torn her dress now hurried across the street to avoid her. They're ashamed, Silas noted one afternoon as they walked past a beet-red Pete, the vegetable seller. They know what they did. Good, Eliza said, the word sharp as a rock. They should be. Silas glanced at her. You have every right to be angry. I just feel tired, Eliza confessed, looking at the street where she'd almost been killed. And sad. They were my neighbors, and they turned on me so fast. Fear makes people do terrible things, Silas said quietly. That's no excuse, but it's the truth. You don't owe them a thing, Eliza. Not forgiveness, not now, maybe not ever. The investigation took 6 weeks. What it uncovered was worse than anyone imagined. Marble hadn't just taken Thomas's $2,000. She had been stealing from the town's estates for nearly 5 years, cheating widows and orphans out of almost $15,000. Prosecutor Whitfield called a town meeting in the church to lay out her findings. The whole town filed in, quiet and grim. Silas and Eliza sat up front, and she could feel every eye on her back. Whitfield stood at the pulpit, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. For years, she began, this community has been a victim of theft and fraud, orchestrated by Marble Kane. She explained it all, step by step, the forged papers, the fake debts, the money secretly moved to her own accounts. It was a web of lies that had let her live in comfort while she bled families dry. When Whitfield got to Thomas's case, Eliza felt Silas take her hand. Thomas Moore died last March, the prosecutor said, leaving behind savings of $2,143. Mrs. Kane, as the informal executor, reported that his estate had nothing but debts. She then took every last cent for herself. Ms. Kane claimed that money was tied up in debts. That was a lie. There were no debts. She moved the money to her own account and spent it. When Ms. Moore began asking questions, Ms. Kane set out to ruin her good name. She spread vicious rumors and called her healing remedies poisons. Those lies are why you people assaulted an innocent woman. A low grumble of shame went through the crowd. Let me be plain, Whitfield's voice cut through the noise. Eliza Moore is guilty of nothing. Every rumor was a lie. But this community chose to believe those lies and act like a mob. The silence that followed felt heavy as a tombstone. Marble Kane will face trial in Helena for her many crimes, and she will be found guilty. But her conviction does not wash this town's hands clean. You have to live with what you did. The territorial government is returning the stolen money. Ms. Moore, you will receive your husband's savings plus interest. All the other victims will be compensated as well. Ms. Kane's house and property will be sold at auction to help pay for the damages. Whitfield then turned to Eliza. Ms. Moore, would you care to say a few words? The question surprised her. She felt Silas squeeze her hand in support. The choice was hers. She looked at the faces that had scorned her. She could have let them have it, but she knew rage would just keep her tied to this awful past. She and Silas walked to the front of the church. I cannot tell you that I forgive you, Eliza said, her voice strong. Because I do not. Maybe I never will. What you did to me was cruel, and there is no excuse for it. She saw them flinch. For 14 long months I lived in constant fear. I barely slept or ate, just waiting for the violence. You took my peace from me. You stole my chance to grieve my own husband. Agnes Holbrook began to cry, and even the men looked down at the floor full of shame. But what you did will not define my life, Eliza declared. You will not have that power over me. I survived your worst, and I am still here. I will keep on living and working as the person I have always been, not the monster you tried to create. She looked at the crowd, letting her words sink in. You want forgiveness? Then earn it. Stop the gossip, stop believing the worst in people, and stop staying silent when you see wrong. Be better. Be the community you should have been. The church was dead quiet. Then old Doc Hartley started clapping, slow and steady. Soon, others joined in. Not everyone, of course. Sarah Pritchard just sat there scowling, but enough people clapped to make it mean something. Back in her seat, Silas leaned close. That was perfect, he whispered. Later, Agnes Holbrook came up, her eyes full of tears. Eliza, I am so sorry. I was your friend, and I left you all alone. Eliza looked at the woman who had turned her back when things got hard. Yes, Eliza said softly. You should have. I know, and I have to live with that, Agnes cried. I just wanted you to know I am sorry. Eliza's voice was not unkind. Some things cannot be fixed, Agnes. You made your choice. Agnes nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away. That was hard, Silas said as they left. It was necessary, Eliza replied, feeling a weight lift. An apology does not erase what happened. In the weeks that followed, some folks in Red Hollow apologized. Others, like Sarah, just got meaner. Most just stayed away, which was fine by Eliza. The trial in Helena was quick. Danny Warren testified against Marble to save his own skin, telling the court how she had paid him to lie. The jury was out for less than 3 hours. Guilty. Marble Kane was sentenced to 20 years in prison. She was 43 years old. At the sentencing, Marble's eyes met Eliza's. There was no regret in them, only pure hate. Eliza stared right back until Marble finally looked away. On the long ride home, Silas finally asked, "How do you feel now that it is over?" "Relieved," Eliza said, "but also a little empty. The fight is over and I do not know what to do next." "You live," Silas told her simply. "You figure out who you are now." "What if I do not know who that is anymore?" Eliza asked. "Then you are Eliza Crow, my wife," Silas said, his voice steady. "A woman who survived hell and came out stronger. A woman who faced down the people who hurt her. A woman who makes medicine, grows gardens, and runs into burning barns to save horses." He glanced at her. "That is who is left, and that is more than enough." A warmth spread through Eliza's chest. She realized she had started to care deeply what Silas thought of her. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." "Always," Silas replied, and it felt like a promise. 2 weeks later, her money arrived. $2,143 plus interest. She stared at the bank draft, hardly believing it was real. Asked her. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had become a trusted friend. "I just do not know," Eliza confessed. "Thomas saved that money for our future. But that future is gone." Mrs. Chen poured the tea. "Then you make a new one. Figure out what the woman you are now truly needs." That evening, Eliza told Silas her plan. "I want to open an herbal clinic. Not here, but in a town like Three Forks, for folks who cannot afford a doctor. I will use Thomas's money to make it happen." Silas put his fork down, his expression thoughtful. "That is a tall order, Eliza. It will take more than just money to get something like that off the ground." "I know," she said, her voice firm. "But I know my remedies. Thomas always said I had a gift for healing, and I want it to mean something." "What about your safety?" he asked gently. "Some people still believe those old rumors." "Then I will prove them wrong," she declared. "One patient at a time. The work will speak for itself." Silas studied her face, then a slow smile spread across his. "All right," he said. "Let's do it." "Really?" she asked, her heart leaping. "Really," he confirmed. "But on one condition. You let me help. Not with money, but with finding a place, with making sure you are protected. We will be partners." Eliza felt tears welling up. "Partners?" They shook hands right there at the dinner table. It felt formal, but it also felt right. Their marriage was a partnership, and they were about to build something real together. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. They found a small building in Three Forks, and with help from Silas and Mrs. Chen, transformed it into a proper clinic. On a crisp October morning, Eliza opened for business. The sign on the door read, "More Clinic, Herbal Medicine and Care." She kept Thomas's last name, wanting his sacrifice to be remembered in the good work she was about to do. The first patient, a miner's wife with a cough that would not quit, arrived within the hour. Eliza prescribed a syrup made from hound and wild cherry bark. After that, a child with a rash came in, then an old man with aching joints. Soon, word spread clear out to the mining camps. Folks started coming from a day's ride away, seeking the widow whose medicine worked and who treated people with dignity, whether they could pay full price or not. Silas visited one afternoon and found her looking tired but glowing with purpose. "You are helping people, Silas," she said, her face bright. "They trust me." "Of course they do," he said warmly, looking around the bustling clinic. "You are brilliant at this. Thomas would be proud of you." Eliza's heart ached with a familiar but softer grief. "I hope so." Silas reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The small gesture felt surprisingly intimate. "And Eliza," he said softly, "so am I." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them. A silent understanding passed between them. A recognition that their marriage of convenience was becoming something real. Before a word could be spoken, another patient arrived, shattering the moment. Silas gave her a small smile. "I will leave you to your work, Mrs. Crow. I will see you at home for dinner." The word home settled in Eliza's heart. The Crow Ranch had truly become her home. Winter came early that year, dusting the land with snow. Her clinic had been open for 3 months, and in that time she had treated more than 200 people. She had even hired Catherine, a young widow who needed a purpose. It felt good to pass on her knowledge. The door chimed, bringing in a gust of cold air and Doc Hartley. "I came to see this operation everyone is talking about," he announced. "Figured it was time I met the competition." The old doctor looked over her shelves, his eyes sharp and critical after 50 years in medicine. "You grow these herbs yourself?" he asked. "Most of them," Eliza confirmed. She pulled out a record book showing him the detailed notes she kept on every plant and every patient. "I learned early that transparency is important." Doc Hartley grunted, flipping through the pages, his eyebrows rising higher and higher. "This is good work, Mrs. Crow. Damn good work." He closed the book carefully. "Have you ever considered getting formal training? There are medical schools back east." The suggestion caught Eliza completely by surprise. She had never imagined her work could be considered real medicine by someone like him. "My methods are not conventional," she said carefully. "Medicine needs unconventional," Doc Hartley stated firmly. "You have a natural talent. With proper training, you could do even more good than you are already doing." That evening, Eliza showed Silas the medical journals Doc Hartley had left for her. She found him in his study, focused on his account books. "He thinks I should pursue formal medical training," she told him. Silas set aside his ledger. "That is high praise coming from him. What do you think about it?" Eliza gave a shaky laugh. "I am terrified. I am 32 years old, Silas. I barely finished my schooling." He saw the truth in her eyes. "The idea terrifies you," Silas finished for her. "But you want to do it anyway." She admitted it would mean great changes for the clinic and for their lives. Silas stood and came around the desk to sit beside her. He took her hand in his. "When I married you, I promised you protection. What I should have said is that I also promised you freedom. The freedom to become whoever you want to be. If you want to study medicine, then you should study medicine. I will support you however I can. You taught me that nothing worthwhile is ever convenient." Tears pricked Eliza's eyes. As they sat together in the warm study, she realized with a start that she was happy. It was a deep, earned happiness she had not felt in years. "Silas," she said quietly, "can I ask you something about us?" He watched her, waiting. "When we married, you said it was not a love match, that it was practical. Is that still true for you?" The silence stretched between them. His thumb moved gently against her knuckles. "No," he finally said, his voice low. "It stopped being true sometime around the moment you ran into a burning barn. Or maybe it was when you stood up in that church and told an entire town what they needed to hear. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment, Eliza. But somewhere along the way, practical became personal. Protection became something more." His confession hung in the air, a promise of a future she had never dared to imagine. "I have to tell you something," Silas said one night, his voice serious. "The way I worry about you, it is not just practical. It is the kind of worry that has me sleeping in a chair because I cannot stand to be far from you. I love you, Eliza Crow. I am tired of pretending this is just an arrangement." The honest words filled the quiet room. Eliza thought of Thomas, her first love, and the part of her heart he would always hold. But she was not the same woman he had married. The trials she had faced had forged someone new. She tightened her grip on Silas's hand. "The woman I was. She loved Thomas with all her heart," she said slowly. "But the woman I am now, the one you helped me become, she loves you, Silas Crow." His breath caught. "I mean it," she whispered, surprised by the depth of truth in her own words. "I love your strength, and how you always believed in me." "Maybe," she said, a small smile on her face, "we get more than one kind of love in a lifetime, if we are just brave enough to reach for it." "I love how you see me," she said, her voice soft. "Not as a victim, but as a partner." Silas moved closer, his hand gently touching her face. "May I kiss you as your husband? As the man who loves you?" "Yes," Eliza whispered. The kiss was slow and deep, full of everything they had not said. It was a new beginning. When they parted, he asked, "So what happens now?" "Now," Eliza said, "I study to become the best healer I can be. And you? You stop sleeping in that chair and move into the bed where you belong. Because we are truly married now, Silas, and it is time we started acting like it." A slow smile spread across his face. "Yes, ma'am." The winter passed in a blur of happy work. Eliza enrolled in medical courses by mail, studying late into the night while Silas worked beside her. Their clinic grew, and they were building something good together, a life filled with purpose and quiet joy. Eliza taught other women about basic herbs, sharing what she knew instead of keeping it secret. The folks from Red Hollow were a complicated matter. Some swallowed their pride and came to her clinic for help. She treated them all the same, but she never forgot their silence when she had been in trouble. A year after Thomas's death, Eliza finally rode back to Red Hollow. She walked right through the market square where they had nearly killed her. People stared, but nobody dared to say a word. She went to the cemetery and found Thomas's simple granite headstone. Kneeling down, she traced the letters of his name. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back," she whispered. "I just wasn't ready. But I'm happy now, Thomas, I truly am. And Silas, well, he is a good man. I think you would have liked him." She stayed for a long while, saying all the things that had been locked inside her heart. When she left, the heavy weight of grief felt just a little bit lighter. She found Doc Hartley waiting for her by the cemetery gate. He figured she might show up that day. He walked with her for a bit. "Mrs. Crow," he said, "I am glad you survived what this town tried to do. And I'm glad you did not let it make you bitter." "Oh, I am bitter," she answered honestly, "but I will not let it be the only thing I am." He told her she was wise and encouraged her to keep studying medicine. He believed she had the makings of a great doctor. That summer, the clinic grew so much they had to expand. Silas took her to a medical conference in Denver, and it turned into the honeymoon they never had. On their last night there, Silas turned to her with a serious look. "What would you think," he asked, "about expanding the ranch? We could give other women a second chance, just like you got. We could build cottages and offer them real work, a safe place to start over." Eliza's heart swelled. It was a huge idea, but it was the right thing to do. They knew what it was like to be desperate, and they knew how much one helping hand could change everything. "Yes," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "Let's absolutely do that." They returned home and got to work right away. Some of the other ranchers grumbled about bringing that kind of woman into the valley. Silas set them straight at a cattlemen's meeting. "My wife was once that kind of woman," he said, his voice firm and clear. "Innocent and accused. She survived because someone gave her a chance. If any of you have a problem with us helping others do the same, then you can get off my land and stay off." No one argued after that. The first woman to arrive was Margaret, a widow with 3 small children. She was a hard worker and a blessing to have. Soon, more women came, each with a story that broke your heart. By the fall, the ranch was a new place full of life and the sounds of children playing. The women had built a community, a real family. Eliza knew this was her true legacy, a place of safety and second chances. Then a letter came. She had been accepted to a medical school for women in Philadelphia. She was scared to even talk to Silas about it. "Philadelphia is a long way off," she finally said one evening. 2,000 miles. I would be gone for months at a time. Silas did not even hesitate. He looked her right in the eye. "You need to go, Eliza. This is your dream. I did not marry you to make your world smaller. I married you to watch you become everything you are meant to be." He pulled her into his arms. "Go to Philadelphia, become a doctor, then come on home to me." Silas held her firm. "Eliza, I want the woman who is living her own life, not one who feels trapped here with me. We will figure this out." But just 1 month before she was set to leave for Philadelphia, life had other plans. Eliza discovered she was pregnant. The news hit her like a ton of bricks. A baby would tie her to this ranch, and medical school felt like it was slipping through her fingers. That night she told Silas, her voice trembling, "I want this baby, but I want my dream too." They stayed up talking until dawn, turning over every option. The path forward was a hard one. Eliza would wait a year, have their child, and then she would go. It would be difficult, but they would face it together. She got Catherine ready to run the clinic and focused on what was next. The women of the ranch rallied around Eliza, sharing wisdom that only comes from experience. That December, with the valley snowed in for 3 days, she gave birth to their daughter. Holding the tiny girl, Silas's voice was thick with emotion. Eliza thought of her long journey, of all the women who had found a second chance at life on this ranch. "We will call her Hope," she said. 15 months later, Eliza headed to Philadelphia with baby Hope and a young woman named Julia. Medical school was every bit as hard as she expected. She was older than the others, a mother with real-world experience that her professors either doubted or admired. She blended her knowledge of herbs with modern medicine, proving her unique worth. The letters and holiday visits home with Silas were the fuel that kept her going. Even miles apart, their letters kept them close. Eliza was in her 3rd year of medical school when a young wife, battered and broken, came into her care. Eliza knew that story because she had lived it. She cleaned the woman's wounds and gave her the address to the Crow Ranch. She promised her a safe place to work and heal, a real chance to start over. In that moment, Eliza understood her purpose: to stand before other broken women and prove they could survive. She graduated in the spring of 1879, one of only 12 women in her class. Silas and their daughter Hope were there to see it. Then, instead of staying put, Eliza did the unthinkable. She went back to Montana to open a clinic right in Red Hollow, the very town that had nearly destroyed her. On opening day, Eliza stood in her doctor's coat and waited. Her first patient was Agnes Holbrook, a woman who had once stood by and watched her suffer. Agnes begged for help for her sick child. Eliza treated the boy and then looked Agnes in the eye. She told her that if she truly wanted to make things right, she should never again stay silent when someone was wronged. All day, people from her past came to the clinic. Some had hurt her, and some had stayed quiet. She treated every single one with the same steady compassion. She was a doctor, and her job was to heal, not to judge. The Red Hollow Clinic did well, and soon she and another doctor were serving the entire territory, changing the way people thought about medicine. The ranch grew too. By 1882, it was a thriving community with its own school and a women's cooperative. It was a place built on hope and second chances. Eliza and Silas had 2 more children, and their home was filled with love and happy noise. One evening, 9 years after their wedding, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The lights from the cottages they helped build glowed in the twilight. Silas turned to her and asked if she ever regretted marrying him, if she ever missed having a normal life. Eliza looked at the man who had given her the freedom to become herself. She thought about the desperate woman she used to be, and the doctor and mother she was now. "Never," she said. "Not for a single second. Easy things don't change you, Silas. You gave me the chance to choose who I would become, and I chose this." He pulled her close. "I love you, Eliza Crow," he said. And she laughed, because this messy, imperfect life was everything she ever wanted. It was a life they built from scratch, from pain and from fierce choices. See, everyone in town thought the rich rancher married the poor widow out of pity. But they were wrong. Silas married her because he saw her strength when she could not. He did not rescue her. He stood beside her. He gave her the space to fight for herself. And with that gift, she built an empire of healing and hope. And she proved that the best revenge isn't getting even, it is building a better life. Eliza came to understand that the true answer to cruelty was simply to live well. As the sun set over Montana, she would hold Silas's hand, listen to her children play, and feel a deep sense of peace. She had walked through fire and built something beautiful from the ashes. The Crow name came to mean welcome and purpose, not power and money. When people would ask if she regretted her hard journey, her answer never changed. "I only regret that it was necessary, but I never regret where I ended up. This life, I chose it." Her story became a legend, not of a woman who was rescued, but of one who rescued herself. And on a quiet hill overlooking the valley, wildflowers always bloomed on Thomas Moore's grave. Eliza never knew who put them there. Perhaps it was the land itself, honoring the man whose love and sacrifice had made all this healing possible. The flowers bloomed, and the clinic doors never closed. The ranch remained a haven. The Crow family grew, a living testament that the rockiest starts can lead to the most beautiful destinations. And in the end, that was more than enough. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.